The Biden administration has hit a record low when it comes to resettling refugees as part of the U.S. Refugee Admission Program. According to the State Department, 11,411 refugees have been resettled. That's even less than President Trump's low point. On the campaign trail, Biden pledged to resettle as many as 125,000 people a year through the program.
Now, according to Hill reporter Rafael Bernal, the White House and the State Department face another challenge in regards to U.S. policy toward Haiti, as pressure builds on Biden to deliver a diplomatic breakthrough for Haiti's civil society. This comes after the former U.S. Special Envoy to Haiti resigned after learning about the deportation of Haitian migrants on the news without any consultation from the administration. Hill reporter Rafael Bernal joins us now to discuss further. Thanks for being with us.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So what is the situation right now? Obviously, immigration was such an important issue for the Democratic coalition. The people who put Biden in power were very critical of what was going on under the Trump administration, but it doesn't look like the situation has improved much.
So, it's basically a case of overpromising and under-delivering. The Department of Homeland Security has control over most aspects of immigration, and the immigration system of the United States has been sort of chipped away at for decades now, making it more difficult for people to come legally, making smaller the avenues of legal migration toward the United States, and making the punishment for illegal migration or immigration, more expensive, more difficult for people to manage. So when the Biden administration comes in and says, well, we're going to liberalize immigration, it's not just that they're trying to reform DHS from where Trump had tweaked it to be very aggressive and very enforcement heavy. It's that DHS as an institution over its nearly 20 years of existence has been sort of a Trumpian institution or a proto-Trumpian institution before Trumpism was a thing.
Yeah.
Are the Haitian immigrants that came, and then ended up being deported, were they being treated any differently than, let's say, those coming in from Latin America?
Well, the accusations are that they were. There's a lot of talk about how black migrants from Latin America, or from the rest of Latin America, or from Haiti, and this is very clear with like black or white migrants from Cuba, they're treated more harshly, and it's not obviously an institutional go after the black migrants policy. And I don't know of any administration in the 20th and 21st century, or late 20th and 21st century that has had such a policy. But in the end, they are treated more harshly. And we saw that in Del Rio, whipping with the horse reins and that sort of thing that would have been unacceptable. To be fair, it was a very unique situation for the Border Patrol. They don't usually confront such large groups at once, but obviously the result of the decisions made by Border Patrol leadership on that scene was a negative result, and further strengthened the idea that black migrants are treated worse than other migrants.
Tulsi Gabbard made an appearance on Fox News where she blamed Biden's open border policy for the surge at the border. Let's watch that.
The Biden-Harris administration has an open door policy at the borders, and it doesn't matter how many times Secretary Blinken or Kamala Harris or anyone from the administration says, don't come across the border. The reality is that people are being let in and crossing the border every single day. The fact is that the open door policy that this administration has in place is posing a humanitarian crisis, is creating a humanitarian crisis as well as a very serious security threat for our country.
It's so hard to, I always say that, we don't want people coming across in this very kind of in this rush and in this very unsafe, it's unsafe for them. It's not good. Also, we're in the middle of a pandemic. But you're going to have that unless you have some kind of process. But we have to reform the process to make it easier to come here legally, and then we'll have fewer people coming here illegally. Is that what we're seeing?
Essentially, yes. When you ban anything, whether it's drugs or guns or migration or abortion, and I touched on all the difficult ones on purpose, you will get a black market for that product or service or sociological phenomenon. You see that in migration.
Right.
It's strange to me. Gabbard did say she compared later on in the piece. She compared the numbers of border crossings this year, which are historical highs. There's no doubt about that. She compared it to 2020 numbers, and that's a little bit innumerate because obviously 2020, because of the pandemic, should have an asterisk next to its name. Right. But it is interesting to see sort of an idiosyncratic Democrat like Tulsi Gabbard talk about sort of the goal being nobody crossing the border when the rest of the party is definitely not at that point. That is not how they're measuring success. That is how a lot of Republicans are measuring success.
Does Tulsi speak for? Yeah, I know you're a fan of Tulsi, Kim. What's she doing?
I was a big supporter of hers during the election. I think that she's maybe shifted on some things, and border policy might be one of those things that I don't agree with her on anymore. But one thing that she's mentioning there is the open door policy. During her campaign, it wasn't so much about the open door policy. It was about previous policies of the United States that sort of created these crises in Latin America, and very much we've seen in Haiti over the years, the various different, administrations doing various different things to Haiti, causing sort of this, lack of economic prosperity in the country. So how much of this do you think is actually open door policy at the border? Or do you think, Rafael, that this has more to do with the historical, just the historical policy the United States has had throughout Latin America and Haiti?
I mean, it's completely false to say that there is an open door policy. The 7,500-ish Haitians who've been repatriated since the Del Rio thing, since September 19th, would tell you that that's clearly not an open door policy. But there is a balance, right? There is sort of some people at the border, some Haitians in the United States told their relatives that it was easier for them to cross and it was easier for them to stay, not understanding any Haitian who was in the United States before July 29th sort of got a cutoff date, and they're good to stay for at least a while under the temporary protected status program. That created a little bit of a telephone, the game telephone, and some Haitians were attracted to the United States by that. That is obviously not an open doors policy. On the other hand, you do have U.S. policy in the region. Some countries are more affected by it. Haiti is the example of a country where the United States has been very involved in Haitian politics since the 90s. It was especially involved during the Obama administration. And since the Obama administration, Haiti has taken the turn for the worse. It's in its worst state since the end of the Duvalier dictatorship in the 1980s. And the United States did have a direct effect on the worsening of conditions of Haiti. Of course, there was also 2 very big earthquakes. Those are nobody's fault. But Haiti was not in the condition to repair itself because of policies to do with the United States and the entire international community. Let's remember that the whole world has sort of done Haiti wrong, but particularly the United States. You can't really say that with Mexican migrants, for instance. Mexico has had its own governance issues and its own governance successes. So there's always a balance. But in the case of Haiti, yes, the role of the United States in growing Haitian migration is primary.
Well, but even in Mexico, right? The role that our drug war plays in empowering drug cartels in Mexico that then create political instability and violence and then cause people to flee the country is not something we're trying to do, but is an indirect result of our policies, right?
Oh, certainly the drug war has not helped Mexico, and since 2006 has been a complete disaster in Mexico and has been a worsening disaster. Mm-hmm. The United States plays a huge role on there. But then you have sort of the integration of both economies and the actual industrialization of Mexico that's created good jobs in the country. So there's a balance. And then the Mexican government, well, it's a government that rules a much larger, more robust country, a more robust economy. And the mistakes they have made are more sort of on them than on the United States. But yes, the drug war is a perfect example of where the United States has done, specifically Mexico, wrong.
Yeah. Good points. Rafael, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Great being here.
Yeah. We'll have more Rising for you right after this.